Welcome to Obsidian. Today let's have a look at my room and my setup. Alright, g'day guys. So today we're going to be having a bit of a look at, I guess, my room and my software setup. I've had these questions come up previously with people like, how do you play and what does your setup look like, and what tools do you use and what's your workflow and all that sort of stuff. So I thought we'd just take the time just to have a bit of a look at it. So what I've started with today is Excalidraw in Obsidian, just to document everything out because Excalidraw is obviously amazing. So let's jump in and have a bit of a look. Alright, so my setup. If anyone hasn't seen my room before, I am pretty lucky. I've got a massive room, and I am talking massive. The previous owner built a room for his train station, or his train set, and it was like a 17 metre by 8 metre room or something crazy. Like, it is massive. I obviously don't use all of that, but a large chunk of it is dedicated to my D&D. And you can see here that I've got that set up sort of right here. So pretty comfortable area. The map usually stands out for people. The TV table, of course, is a fantastic addition to the entire place. And look, I've gone through lots of different sort of play styles coming into Dungeons and Dragons. I started with the old ChessX sheet, grid, laminated sheet, like going through and drawing with a whiteboard marker. I'm left-handed, so that didn't work out too well because I kept like drawing and rubbing things off. I moved from there to terrain. We came from 40k, so we were used to minis and we were used to terrain, and I dived right in with Herstart's terrain, making all of my own terrain. And I will say this, like, I do not believe in using physical 3D terrain for Dungeons & Dragons. Been there, done that. I think it has a negative impact on your table. It tends to have your players start to think about what's displayed on the table instead of what you're saying to them might be there, and it impacts their decision-making process. A good example of that is that they knew how long it used to take me to create some of these 3D terrain setups and lay it all out on the table, and like it's an extensive amount of time, and you can't transition scenes in Dungeons and Dragons effectively when you're doing that. So we've gone away from that now. I moved from there onto a projector on the roof. I didn't like that at all. You had to play in the dark. You had shadows everywhere. You had keystone correction issues. So that was problematic. And eventually I just bit the bullet and said, all right, well, we've bought a new TV. I've got a TV here. Let's see what I can do. And went onto Facebook Marketplace, bought an old table, cut a hole in it and put the TV in, and then just built up around it. And you know what, from a cost efficiency wise, I would say that the TV table was probably the cheapest and best option that I've come across. 3D terrain will cost you an absolute fortune. You will need to forever be trying to store it. I have the room to store it, so that's not the issue. But then, things happen, like you have children. Children start playing with 3D terrain, and you die a little bit inside every time you come around the corner and you see another piece broken off. There's just, it's just a much better game, in my opinion, to use a digital TV table, and I highly recommend everyone looks at it. If you don't have the space, you can make a TV table box. It works just as well. I have the space, so I've made a very large table. Every player has a calculated amount of space to put books and things, and there's definitely enough room to have a book fully open, A4 piece of paper alongside the table. So they've got plenty of room, and they've got plenty of room for snacks and pencils and dice rolling and all that sort of stuff. Outside of that, what do we do? So you can see here, I've got my map wall. Right, everyone loves my map wall. That was a pretty expensive thing to buy. I think it started around $600, but they got it wrong a few times, so the price came right down. I think I ended up paying like $350 or $400 for it, but I love it. Just being able to stand in front of the map wall, point to towns, point to cities, show trade routes, show travel routes, that sort of thing. Like it's really cool. And we have reusable wall decals. So my children were given some wall stickers by one of their aunties to put on their bedroom walls. And I noticed that they don't really notice that they go missing if you just take one at a time. So, the stars from the bedroom walls have slowly transitioned into my D&D wall, and I've got the stars on the walls where the players are, representing the key towns in our story currently. So, and you can just peel those off and move them on. It's actually like a material that sticks to the wall, so it's actually reusable. You can pull it off and change it if you want. And it's in about 3 different segments, I think. So it wasn't easy to put up. It wasn't easy to line up. It took a few people, but the effect is amazing, and I absolutely love it. All right, so just having a look at my players, what are they using? So we use D&D Beyond for our character sheets. I strongly recommend it. Anyone that knows me knows that I came from Hero Lab, and I was big in the Hero Lab community for a long time, working on the SDR and working on the community pack and all that sort of stuff. But oh damn, that's a lot of work. You're constantly coding. There's constant changes. There's a constant expectation that the community will keep that thing up to date. And then there's something like D&D Beyond where you can just pay for it. All right. Anyone who says it's too expensive has absolutely no idea the amount of effort that goes into coding these tools in order to make them work. All right. It's not just a case of just copying pasting values in. Like, there's work involved. So I've transitioned over to D&D Beyond. We all use D&D Beyond, and I strongly recommend it. The fact that it's synchronizing, right? So as my players are making changes to their character sheets, like that's synchronizing to the website, and then I can pull those down into my notes. I really like that. We roll real dice, all right? My only rule is that you can't roll metal dice on my table. Because of dents and things like that. So, if you want to roll metal dice at my table, you do need to bring a dice tower or a dice rolling platform of your choice, and that works fine. And we use real minis. I'm a mini guy. I've got so many minis, more minis than I'm ever going to be able to paint, and the next person to comment, oh, what happened you painted them? I'll just come back to you and say, well, why don't you have as many minis as I've got? La, 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 la. I have hundreds upon hundreds. I've got hundreds more coming. The Reaper Bones Kickstarters, if anyone's looking to get into miniature collection, like the Reaper Bones Kickstarters are like just crack for DMs, right? You just go in, you pay a few $100s and you get a few hundred miniatures out of it. You do have to wait 1 to 2 years, but once you're in that cycle, they launch another one every 2 years and you end up with more minis and you're waiting for more, and they're just more cool stuff. I'm at a point now where I don't need a lot. I keep telling myself that, and yet I keep buying, right? So there's always that one cool mini that I don't have that I really like. So yeah, I'm a mini guy. All right, having a look at my physical setup. So how do I make it work? All right, so you can see here I've got 2 monitors facing back to back with each other, and I've got a monitor in the middle of the table. That's my TV screen. So what I've got is behind my DM station, I've got my computer. Okay, I don't prep on that computer. I've got a computer dedicated for it. Well, it was dedicated for it. My children have since decided that's their machine, and it quite often gets used for gaming. But outside of that, my PC's underneath my desk here. I've got my player-facing screen, and obviously I DM with that. On the other side of that is another, my DM-facing screen. I've then got the player-facing screen back-to-back with that, so my players always have visibility to a screen. I'm actually planning a new upgrade to my room. I'm actually going to put my DM screen up here in the corner. I'm just trying to find a nice way to actually connect the device from all the way over here up to here, either wirelessly or with a dedicated HDMI cable, perhaps. We'll see how we go. But that will be the idea. So it's sort of cleaning up my DM station a bit. Now, for anyone who's technical-minded or not technical-minded, you might come across the issue that most computers only support 2 screens. All right, so generally you need to get something pretty special, like a pretty good graphics card to support 3 screens. So what I've done to get around that is I have my PC going into this thing called a Lenovo ThinkPad. And anyone who's coming from a enterprise business environment might recognize these sort of things. Like, it's really just a docking station designed to be used for laptops. And right, you can Google laptop docking station and you'll come up with something like this. Like, don't think you need to get a Lenovo ThinkPad specifically. It's just the brand that was available to me at the time. But basically what these things are, right, is they plug into your PC using a USB cable. Once the USB cable is done, it extends the functionality. So it provides more USB slots. It provides some various options for sort of, plugging in monitors. You can plug your network cable into this as well. And, you know, the idea is that, you know, these are designed so you can take a laptop, put it down at a station, plug your laptop in, and you get your network, you get your monitors, you get your keyboard, you get your mouse, and it all connects up. And then if you were to pick your laptop up, move to another station, you connect into this thing again, and that way you're not like lugging lots of hardware around, and you've got, you know, a PC set up even though you're using a laptop. But they work for PCs as well, so that's where it's beneficial here. So my DM station is connected to my ThinkPad. All right, I've got one monitor cable here coming out into one of these devices. I think it's actually the TV, I think, is connected directly to the DM station. And the reason for that is I'm using a HDMI cable, and that allows me to send sound from my PC to the TV as well as my visual video signal. And then I've got two other connections coming out, so you know, connecting to the player-facing screen, connecting to the DM screen. So this enables me to have one video output from the DM station and two video outputs from my Lenovo ThinkPad. All right, which allows me to connect up 3 different monitors to my station, and you know, it works. I've tried lots of different things over the years. I think there was a Microsoft display stick thing that I tried to extend with. I didn't find that worked very well. It was jittery, it broke out. So this is a better solution. It wasn't, you know, the cheapest of solutions. I think I paid about $300-400 for this thing, but you know, it was, you know, worth it in the long run. All right, and obviously, like, thinking outside the box here, like, how does this all sort of set up? You know, you've got your physical setup, you got your players, all right, but then what am I running behind my screen? What software am I using? All right, so if we come in and have a look here, we can see that my DM software is quite simple these days. I've got 2 tools that I'm using. I've got, obviously, Obsidian. All right, Obsidian.md. Everyone who follows me should know that this is what I use. Love this tool. It is amazing. All right, and then I have the VTT, or the virtual tabletop, which is Foundry VT. All right, slight intermission there. Sorry, aren't children wonderful? Okay, so we'll get back to this. We've got the Foundry VTT as my virtual tabletop. I'm running that obviously on my DM station. I'm actually running it on my inside computer where I do my prep. And basically I have all of my files sort of set up inside there, and then I'm connecting to it using my DM station, which is using a remote connection. So that's just the way the Foundry VTT works. Like, I could do that on my other computer, but I've decided to use my inside computer just because it's part of my prep process. So what that does though is it has my control screen on my screen, which I use using one browser. And then I have a player-facing version of that on the TV. I just open that up in a incognito mode on the TV there using another browser. I then press, I think it's F10 or F11 to make that full screen with the browser, which means it doesn't have any UI around it. It just shows the maps, guys. Like, that's it. So it has a map, has fog on it. I've got some plugins for changing it to manual fog control, because that's what I prefer. I don't use any virtual tokens, I don't use any virtual dice, I don't use Foundry whatsoever, except for showing the map, controlling the fog, and sometimes allowing music to play. Okay, so if I'm using a 3D map, which Foundry VTT does support, like an animated map, then sometimes they come with music, and in that case there I'll quite often allow that to play. Outside of that though, Obsidian.md is, you know, my primary tool. Okay, so let's just talk about some of my setup here, and I'll walk you through this in more detail in a sec. But I have a folder structure. I see a lot of people in the Obsidian community using something Zatorian or I don't know. They have some crazy methods for organizing their data, and the amount of things that they organize, like, it just blows my mind how many notes some of these people take about things that I would never consider noting in my life. So my configuration might not work for everyone, but it works for me. So I'm a folder guy, okay? And we can see over here on my left that I do have all my folders set up, but here's sort of like a high-level overview of what I have. So I have my DM screen. My DM screen is a Kanban board that basically has links to, you know, the rules that aren't necessarily things. So what I mean by that is like a spell is kind of a thing, a monster is a thing, they have their own rules. But then there's rules for like how to play the game, like what a long rest is, how to grapple someone. Like they're the sort of rules that I have inside of here. Things that I can just look up and come back to. I don't use that very often. Like I've been DMing now for what, D&D 5th edition's been out for nearly 10 years. So for the most part, I don't need to go back and reference those things. But what I do use in there is my random generators. So that gets a lot of use. Scratch notes, you know, I never needed a mobile device to prep my vault or my world. Back in the Realm World days, I always did my prep at my computer, and that's just how it was. But Obsidian allows it, so I've set it up. So Scratch Notes is a folder that I've got synchronizing with my Android device. Now, I could synchronize my whole vault, but my whole vault is like close to like 5 gig or something, right? That's quite a bigger space amount that's required there. So synchronizing all of those files to my mobile device felt like overkill. I just wanted something simple where I could take a note if an idea pops into my head. I could take a note at the table, and then from there I could quite easily, you know, synchronize that back to my vault. So I'm using an application called SyncThing. It's a free application. It's an app on an Android device, or it's a piece of software you can download on your computer. You basically put the two things into synchronization with each other, and then they just start synchronizing any changes to the folders that you specify. So I've specified this folder. I've got a same folder on my Android device, and they just keep that in synchronization. So when I'm laying in bed, or maybe I'm sitting there having an idea when I'm, you know, traveling somewhere, I can just paste it straight into Obsidian. By the time I get back to my computer, it's there, and off I go. Then I have another folder for my session journals. Now, I am using a service to manage my session journals. I'm not using Obsidian Publish, but like honestly, at some point I'll probably go back to Obsidian Publish. I'm using a thing called Markbase currently. It is a plugin inside of Obsidian. But, you know, like we'll see how they go with their updates and see how far they go. It doesn't support local images yet, which is for me a bit of an issue, because local images are certainly something. But that's what they're working on currently, so we'll see where that goes. But with that said, it doesn't support plugins, so therefore, you know, a lot of the things that I'm doing in my vault don't work because I'm plugin heavy, guys. I'm using like 50 plus plugins every session. So anyway, anything put in session journals, that basically then automatically publishes out to my website, so that my players can access those session journals and reference those if they ever need to. Alright, then I have a folder for the party. Now I have one note per player, so I have a note that's linked to the name of the player, so that way if I mention the name of the player inside of my notes, that it automatically links up to that player. And what I'm doing is I'm using iframes to connect to D&D Beyond and bringing that in to my party notes, so that way if I open it, I've instantly got access to the party note. Now, I will say this, I'm not finding this quite usable, alright? I like having a note per player, and I like being able to see and reference my player with my linking, but I don't actually use the notes that often, alright? Or at least not to access their character sheets. What I'm finding is that with Foundry VT being open anyway in a browser, I have another tab open with character sheets for D&D Beyond, okay? And also my players are pretty good with their character sheets. Like, I don't need to reference them most of the time because they're doing it. Where I do find that useful, I guess, though, is between sessions. So if I want to go into D&D Beyond and look up someone's backstory so I can try and, you know, weave that into the current campaign, then I appreciate being able to do that at any time. And if I think back to the old days where we had Hero Lab, some players took their sheets home, some players left their sheets here, sheets went missing, children would come along during the weekday and like trying to find something to draw on, and yeah, sheets go missing. But yeah, D&D Beyond has fixed all those issues, so that's certainly fantastic. So yeah, one note per player. It's useful, but I wouldn't say it's necessary. It's just cool to have. I do use that plugin that gives like a nice icon every time you mention their name, so it just stands out, and that's just cool. All right, my world folder. My world folder is my wiki, and that's probably where I spend a chunk of my time, right? Like, I like preparing my world. I'm playing in the Forgotten Realms, right? So I'm not one of those like DMs who makes everything up from scratch. Like, that's not me. I've definitely got like more of a mechanical brain than a brain that's sort of like, you know, fantastic at bringing up stories and imagination and all that sort of stuff. So I like to research, and I like to bring the things that I research together, and I get enjoyment out of that. So what I do, and I could use the wiki here, like the D&D wiki, just out there in the world, I copy a lot of that over directly. But then as I go, I kind of read through those things, I learn about the world, I like that process, I make changes to it, all right? If there's NPCs mentioned, I'll make a note for that NPC, I'll flesh the NPC out, I'll bring in images for them and all that sort of stuff, and I really like that. And then mechanics. So this is where like I have reference material. So all the monsters, all the spells, all the items, all the magic items are all sort of linked in here. And this is something that's changed over the years. I used to be, back in my Realmwork days, very heavy on like I just had to have the whole monster manual in here, and every single page was kind of like transcribed exactly word for word as it was. With the initiative tracker plugin, that's not necessary anymore. What I have is a note that has their stat block, it has an encounter trigger, and it has a picture. All right, and the reason for that is that the stat block allows me just to reference it easily, but I generally don't even need it. All right, the encounter block is what's important because I can click a button to add that into the encounter. As you can see that on the right here, you can trigger the encounter. You got access to the stat blocks through the plugin. So therefore, the only other thing that I really need is a picture. And then what I do is I have a show to players link that I create that is used to show through the player facing screen. All right. So when the goblins are attacking, I might like throw that up on the player facing screen so they've got a nice visual cue about what it is that they're facing. And I think that works really well. All right, now, on top of that, this is kind of like my base foundation for my vault. On top of that, what I generally have is a single journey board note, and I love my journey board note. I'll show you that in a minute. The journey board note is an Excalibur, just like this, where I'm basically like, I'm mapping out the different sort of directions that things can go in my world, right? So if my players are in a town, I'll have a node for the town, and then I'll have things that might occur in the town, and then I'm linking out to different things, all right? Everything is being sort of referenced through there. It's a high-level plan for what's going to happen in my world over the next couple of games. I've also got a map, all right? A map sits on top of the world, all right? And I have pins all over my map, and I find that really handy for jumping around and sort of quickly finding out information about different places. It's just really sort of a, it's like a shortcut, but it helps me understand the world, helps me understand how things all link together and, you know, what might come next and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's a bit of a high-level overview of my setup. Hopefully that's of interest to you. But now let's go in a bit deeper and show you what these things are. So I know a lot of you, like, when I have my videos, the comments that I get are like, huh, what's that thing that I saw you, like, put up for 3 seconds? Show me that. It's crazy. Like, I'm like giving you videos about how to do things, and you're not actually watching my videos for what I'm doing sometimes. You're watching my videos to see what I'm doing with that thing or what I'm doing with something else. Like, you guys are like really good at picking things up. So let's jump over and go through this. I have got a testbed folder. All right. That's just because I make a lot of videos, guys. I'm testing stuff. So I've decided just to make a folder where I can throw things in and ignore them. All right. My DM screen. All right. This one here, as you can see, is just like a Kanban board. I've put a bit of effort into setting these up. And I've got links to things. So you can see that I've got all of my rules. Okay, you can reference them all nice and quickly, nice and easily. I've got these nice titles up here that I made to make it nice and easy to find things. And if we break this out, you'll see that I've got subfolders in here for all of the different categories. So abilities has a folder. Inside there, if I want to make a new rule or note about that thing, I link it from there. And then basically I've just got a reference point or a link in here that goes straight through. Now, as I said before, I've been playing for a number of years now, so I don't use a lot of these rules. I think I've said in a previous video, the ones that I do use, or the ones I currently like get stuck with, like grapple. I always have to look grapple up. I have a picture in the grapple so that I know, like visually, it's got a cue to draw me to that note. So that if I'm playing a game, I can come in here and go, damn, I need grapple again. All right, there it is, because there's a picture, there's the rule, I'm straight to it. And as you can see, I just have folders for these. But what I do get a lot of use out here is the random generators. So I've been making use of this fast NPC plus pick. All right, you can see that I can quickly click on that, and that brings me up a new NPC. I can quickly come that through. If I like the one that they've given me, what I do is I just click save. All right, so that way I can come back to that person. And then what I do after my session is I go through and I turn these into notes so that I've got a reference point for my NPC, and I keep that from there. But, you know, if I need something else, it's there as well. So magic store generator, for example, like you can come in here nice and quickly and you can generate some stuff that's for sale if you want. Very, very handy to have. Now, scratch notes. All right, this is just ideas that I throw together. I'm using the Midjourney AI bot to generate pictures for things that exist in my world quite a bit. Here you can see I just we had a session. What was it? Sunday. So I just threw in, like, as I was doing things, just jotting down what's happening at a very high level, so that I can come back and reference this after the game. And then what I do is I transcribe that into a session journal. So what was the previous date? 27th, I reckon, 21st to the 8th. So we played on Sunday. Here's an example of a session journal that I've written up. Pretty much, like, I'm terrible at taking notes, I'll be completely honest. Like, for a guy that is just all about campaign management, my ability to note things after the case is terrible. Now, for anyone who knows me, I'm a busy guy. Like, I work a lot. So usually, like, once I stop doing one thing, I go straight to doing another thing. And in this case here, I stop playing my game and I wake up Monday morning and I go to work, and I don't stop thinking about work until I get to the other side of that week usually. So that's why I'm trying to use these session scratch notes to jot down the high level and then actually, like, consciously make myself come in here and write these things out. And you can see, like, I've done a pretty good job this time. This is one of the better things that I've done. I'm trying to, like, kick my own butt here and get myself back into doing this properly. Now, I've written this all out manually. It's based on the session that we had. You can see here that, like, this is kind of one of the first sessions I feel where, like, Obsidian is starting to come together really well. Like, all of my prep and my planning is working. You can see that I've got links to my different player notes here. I think this one here has a link to the D&D Beyond, so you can see it's not working. Alright, there's a different example where I have put effort into someone's character sheet. But the new plugin that we're using to automatically detect things as you type is really, really cool for this, and it's kind of piecing all the bits and pieces together. And then what I did is I synchronized that out to a website. I think I'll just try to bring that up for you. Alright, so deadlydepthin.com. You can see here, and you know, this is messy. 21st of the 8th was our session, and you can see here that it just comes in and makes a nice sort of readable entry for the players. And it's not perfect. You can see here, for example, like the dialogue plugin doesn't necessarily work, but you know, it's still readable, so it's fine. And that just gives my players that sort of thing that they're looking for, is just, you know, what happened last session. I had a player who missed his first ever session. He's lost his badge of honour for being the only guy that never missed a session. Finally got hit by COVID, poor bloke. But now he gets an understanding of what he missed as well, so that's handy. Now, there's timelines and stuff in here, guys. I'm not using them. I'll be completely honest. Like, I'm not a time guy. I'm terrible with calendars, so my work calendar is busy enough as it is without me having to manage 2 calendars, so I don't use it. It's generally just for videos. Then I have my party, right? So the party is where I have my folders for my players. I think NPCs of note, just ignore, that was just an idea I had. I've moved my NPCs somewhere else. My journey board is here though. So the journey board is the important thing. We'll come back to that, but we'll show you, like, some of these. So these are just player notes. All right, I've tried different methods of how to do this. I've got a link here, for example. Some of these do work in that they link into D&D Beyond. Here we go. Alright, so I'm playing around with different sort of layouts. I haven't really found something that I like, but I love this. I love that I can bring in my player character sheets nice and easily. I can reference the information that I need. I'm probably going to take this out. I don't like that they don't sort of like line up next to each other. If that was able to sit in here, which it probably can with some CSS, then I'd probably happily use this, but I think as it is now, it's quite good. So, one note per player, link to their character sheet, that's all I need. It just helps me keep my linking, really. Like, it helps me reference the players by their name. And, you know, sometimes what I'll do is I have an alias, so like Araya is played by Scott. So for me, that's part of like how I remember what their character name is, because when I'm at a table, I prefer to call them by their character name than their in-person name. It's just, it makes it more of a good process, and this helps me sort of do that. You can see over here though that I've got that in the initiative tracker as well. So like Chance is played by Sean, Garbok's played by Tash, right? So when I'm playing, I try to yell at Garbok. I'm always referencing like I'm pronouncing their names wrong though, so they're always laughing at me, bastards. Anyway, you can see I've got other people in here as well. So people have played at my table. I generally keep a folder for those games that have occurred as well. So that's the thing. But let's just go back to the journey board. And the journey board probably doesn't need to sit in this folder, it's just where it's sat. We'll go through this in detail. Alright, so you can see that I've got my journey board, and what I'm doing is, this is a living document, alright? They started in Flan, so I've actually got a link to the Flan wiki document there that I created. Then I've got some sessions, and you can see that I'm linking here. At least I was. No, it looks like I've broken some things. I have. Yeah, I've broken some things. So I was running actual modules here. So in this case, I'm linking to the module that was used during the game. If they meet an NPC, I put a note in here to say that they met that person. All right, and you can see that I've got links to those things. As they go through, like I tried to group them into session 2 here. That was an idea that I had. I've stopped doing that. I probably should get back to that. It'd probably be quite good. But you can see that I'm kind of like documenting this is what happened. This is where they went. Now, as I get down here though, you can see like I come in after the fact and I change these things. So I have a plan, right? And if I look right now, my players are in Shadowdale, or they were in Shadowdale at my last session. So I've got Shadowdale. Right, and I've prepped ahead of time all the different towns that they might go to in order to move on from this part of my story. So what I've done is I've got like, well, the player is in Shadowdale, and they've actually now moved on to the High Moors, so I'll move my player icon over here. The player icon, by the way, is just an emoji. You can press Windows full stop in order to bring up emojis and pick all sorts of cool things. That's where a whole lot of these symbols are coming from. Actually, I don't think that one is. I think that's actually just a pasted in a picture. But anyway, so they were in Shadowdale. So what I did is I had a planning segment over here. All right, just high-level ideas that I was throwing together of what might occur. All right, not all of this actually happened at my table on Sunday. I will go through and I will sort of clean some of this up to sort of give an indication of what occurred. And then if we, come back here, like they got arrested, they got imprisoned, they were interviewed. I cut out a chunk of this stuff that I was planning, but we had a good fun session, and then they moved on. So they went down to Tivilton, but what really helped me in my last session was like this bit here. So I went through and used a travel calculator. It's an external one. It's a Patreon that I'm using. And I used that to calculate the amount of miles between here. Actually, no, I didn't. I used the map to calculate miles between here. I've got that set up in Obsidian. But I used the travel calculator to travel the distance. So 4 days, 2 hours at normal speed. between these two towns, and that was really handy actually, because it gave me a base to sort of start on and plan what I was going to do in between. Like 4 days, I knew I had to put some sort of encounter in there. I knew that I had to see some people on the road. It really helped me keep a plan and structured movement of that. They went to the Tiverton, or the Tiverton Scar, right? So again, linked to my wiki. I got to admit, I'd forgotten that Tiverton wasn't even a town and was Tiverton Scar now. So because I'd gone ahead of time and put my wiki in here, that was really handy, right? I've got links to the Plague Land because Tiverton Scar is taken over by the plague. I had references to show the players like what does the Plague Land look like. And you know, just a reminder that I can do this sort of stuff, right? So I've got show to players, I can open in a new window and then move that to my player screen, and then they can see what's going on. That really helped them freak out about Tiverton. They're like, we're not going in there. And then, you know, one of the players at one point was like, all right, well, I want to use detect evil, and you know, that tells me I should be able to detect dragons and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, well, you know, it says here there's actually a dragon in there. So I was able to share the fact that they could sense the Shadow Shredder inside of the area, and it's all linked here. It just made my life a lot easier. But anyway, they walked around Tiverton, they went down this path, they're now in the High Moors, and I haven't come back and updated this yet, but I will, just to give an idea of like some of the encounters that have occurred here, so that I can come back afterwards and have this sort of like nice visualization of what's going. You can see though, I am planning quite a few steps ahead. So while they're in the High Moors now, I've gone through and I've set up where they might go and what's happening. I'm using different icons to indicate different things. In this place here, like, you know, there's a war going on and some of these towns are getting attacked and some of them aren't. So I'm using like icons to sort of visualize what's happening and the plan that's occurring, and I'm keeping track of where some of the bad guys might be, some of the actions they're taking. So I'm trying to sort of like take a step to make it more of a living, breathing world. And keep track of things. And you know what? I am absolutely loving the freedom of Excalibur. Alright, we used to have this functionality in Realmworks, but it was like really static and sort of locked down in how it worked. I love the ability just to throw ideas onto a piece of paper here. Even reference rules, like, you know, current year is this, the travel rules are that. I really enjoy that I can just move around and put things in here, and just, you know, have visual cues for myself and then link those cues to other things. That is working out super well, and I'm going to be using this method of planning now for a long, long time, I would say, because I'm really, really, really happy with it. Now, outside of that, I then have my world, okay? A lot of people have always wanted to get into my world folder, and you can see in here I've got a breakdown of third-party modules, 5th edition modules, and FR, where FR stands for Forgotten Realms. Now, basically, like, this is where I have the official stuff. So, you know, Horde of the Dragon, Lost Mines of Foundelver, Curse of Strahd, like, you know, these are modules that I've played. I've transcribed these into the tool myself manually using just copy and paste, right? There's tools out there, or digital copies of the modules out there on D&D Beyond and some other places, where you can just copy and paste directly into a tool like this. It's a lot of effort. A lot of people go, oh, why would you do that? That's crazy. Just use the PDF or just use D&D Beyond. PDFs don't exist, guys. They're illegal. Don't use them. But I don't like the fact that they're structured and they're set in concrete, right? Like, I like to be able to come in and start doing my own thing. And just to show you an example of that, I think we are playing Todd currently. So Horde of the Dragon Queen. Then you can see I've got a folder per chapter. It's a folder note, all right? And the reason why I do that is it lets me sort of add additional things in here, all right? So I've added an extra map just in case I need to use it. But what I can do is I come in here and I can make changes to these things, right? So I can come in here and put my leaflet map. I come in here and add pictures of my NPCs with my show to players, so I can actually share them with my player-facing screen. I've got my different NPCs fleshed out in the stat block system, right? So I can share the pictures of them, I can add them to combat, and I've added in my encounters as they occur right inside the module. So I literally like coming in here and reading this thing as I go. I'm clicking buttons to begin encounters. Right, makes it very easy to manage combat, makes it very easy to flow from story to combat. Like, there's no stopping at my table. Like, I don't stop and reach for a book. Like, I don't use books. It is all in here. And you can see, like, any mention of something will generally bring up the rule. All right, it's just such an easy way to do things. So that's what I do there. I do like to keep my modules separated according to the module, right? So I might run Curse of Strahd again one day, and I like to have that set out. So I do have a folder for those. So what I'll sometimes do is I'll break them out. So third-party modules, I have different third-party modules in here that I've run with different parties. So I might have some one-shots that are used occasionally. I might have, in this case, Adventure League modules. I've used a lot of those. All right, so and you probably recognize those as being linked in my journey board before. So that's a handy thing to have. So yeah, I use that, and then sometimes I'll actually come in here and make my own stuff. All right, so where was it? Dungeons on Demand, Homebrew. I have my Homebrew folder where this is where I make a plan for just like what's happening at my table. Right, so I went through and planned this encounter out completely. So therefore I've got a note for that thing. I've got scenes. This thing went completely in a different direction than what I planned. But by having the elements planned, having the NPCs planned, having links to those things, it made it easier for me to run and sort of, adapt as we went. So yeah, that's the world folder, or at least that's the adventures in the world folder. Another element of that is, of course, the Forgotten Realms. So I have inside here, I've got my Pharaon. So this is the area. But within that, then what I have is I have the above and below. At least I did. All right, you got your Underdark. All right, you got folders for big things. So like Waterdeep, for example, has like a million different locations. So I have folders for those things. I have the world above and I have the world below, and it's all sort of linked. So this has kind of dynamically happened over the years. I would say the structure in here is less important to me than the map itself. And you can see here I've brought up the map. I'm using this quite a bit. All right, but I don't access it. Like this folder here, I don't go into this folder during a game. Right, I don't ever manually come in and do that. Like during a game, what I'll be doing is I'll be on my journey board. I'll be moving around here. All right, I'll have Shadowdale linked from here, and I'll come into Shadowdale from there. Or if something crazy happens, I have a shortcut down here for a workspace. Okay, so got my journey board up. I can click Pharaon. That brings up the map. All right, I've got it automatically coded to go sort of the area that we're playing, so it goes straight to where I am. You can see I've got an icon here to show me where the players actually are currently, and you can see I've got pins for everything that occurs as they go. And I tell you what, this is so handy because as my players have moved from Shadowdale down to Tivilton, across to the High Moors, I've been able to sort of just bring up the reference notes and just go in and see what might exist there. So really, really handy. It's allowing me to speed up as I go. I have this set up at different zoom levels. I don't think I'm using it here. Yeah, no, I'm not. But you see if I zoom out, things disappear and it just shows me the capitals. So I can zoom out, show me the high area regions or the capitals that might exist, and then I can zoom in and see the actual sort of towns and encounters, right? And it just sort of makes for a better experience. Historically, using the middle mouse button here, I've historically played around this area. Okay, so there's a few different sort of elements here that probably exist versus over here, which is where we're playing now. I'm trying to document things as I go and trying to stay ahead of my parties. So while they're in Shadowdale, I'm planning, quite a few locations ahead, copying in the wiki, coming in as I go. Anyone who's played Horde of the Dragon Queen would know that I'm probably heading into this region here for a reason. All right, so that's sort of thing. Just to call out here, this is super useful. You can see that I've got shortcuts here to my DM screen. All right, But the one thing that I am finding about workspaces is that workspaces replace the entire screen. All right, and in some situations, like let's just say that you know, I want to just share something on another screen, like you can drag out these days into another screen. All right, so this is over here as a separate window. All right, I can drag it out there. A workspace will shut that down. All right, because the workspace doesn't include that. So that's quite annoying if you've got reference windows that are open that you're trying to keep open. So for that reason, like workspaces, you have to know that you're willing to give up everything else that's open at the same time. So one thing that I have started doing is starring things. All right, so Cult of the Dragon ranks, for example, is something that I've been using just to keep track of the ranks of everyone that's in my game. I'm using these stars now instead of using workspaces, and I'm using that more because then I can control click it. All right, I can pin something if it's very important. All right, if you haven't tried pinning, like that's just handy because it means it opens it in the unpinned window, leaving your pinned window where it is. So that's quite handy. All right, so that's kind of like my world folder, and you can see that is very, very useful as a DM. But then I go into mechanics, and mechanics is kind of like I'm using it less and less. I'm gonna be honest. Like back in the day, I spent all my effort on this. But bestiary, back in the day, I had this fantastic idea that every single thing in here I had to have. All right, so I've got all of my notes, I've got all of my pictures, and you know what? I just don't use these at the table anymore. Right? It's just not necessary. What I do think you need is something a lot simpler. And I think what I've been doing, if I've got the player handbook here, just the monster manual. Whoa, don't hit that button. Don't ever hit that button. Very large data view query, guys. I'm going to freeze now for a couple of seconds while it comes through and processes all 454 monsters into this thing. I love data view for very controlled small areas. For listing a whole monster manual or listing a whole spell book, I do not think it is the right way to go. So there's that. Alright, so you can see it's loaded it now. Oh, this is actually more complex. I don't need this anymore, guys. Like what I'm thinking these days is I need this picture with the open outside. Alright, so I can show players. I need my encounter block. And honestly, these days, I just need the stat block that's rendered you know, by the stat block plugin, and that's it for a monster. And I can create those in bulk using the JSON CSV import tool very quickly, and it's just, you know, it's just a fantastic option. All this text, all these tables, having the dice here, like I just don't use it, and I don't feel it's necessary. And now spells are something that sometimes I do like to be able to look up. All right, so bringing up, see, data view, guys. It's good, it's fantastic, but it does slow you down at the table, and for that reason, I would say be very careful with how often you're using it. But I do like to have these here. Usually, when someone's like asking me at the table for a spell, right? They're saying, "Oh, I've got Fireball, I need to cast it." So I find that the easier way is usually just to come in here with the search. All right, search it up, then you're back very quickly. Or, you know, you might just be throwing ideas out there. You could just come in here, and I'll usually do this. I'll just be like, Fireball. All right, you want to know what the Fireball is? Here's the rules. Like having a scratch note there where you can type the thing that the player's asking about and then quickly reference that is super quick and really sort of easy to use. Alright, so what else is in here that I'm using? I don't use backgrounds, I don't use classes, right? My players have D&D Beyond, everything is handled in there. Dangers I do like, so I will sometimes reference a trap, alright, or a danger, alright, I do use those, and that's really good for sort of creating dungeons. Deities, like if I have a god that I want to learn more about, it's kind of like a wiki place for me to put that. I think that's a good idea. A dictionary, alright, if there's a word that I've not come across previously, sometimes I will put that in here just to be able to reference it later. I'm one of these guys, like you write it down, you remember it, right? Feats, again, handy to have, but not something I get a lot of use of. Guilds and groups, though. Loving guilds and groups. A number of you will have seen my Purple Dragons note. It's been referenced a couple of times because Purple Dragons are quite prominent in the area that we're in currently. I'm adding NPC members to them. So I'm just using this as a place to organise guilds and groups, and I think that's a really valuable thing. What I do is I go through and I add encounter blocks for common stat blocks that could be used by this guild. Alright, so I've got some, the Tell Sword Sergeant, the Blade Arnsman, the First Sword, the Scout Red Captain. These aren't specific to the Purple Dragons, but they're suitable. So if my players encounter the Purple Dragons and they do something stupid, like say, oh, I pull out a pair of lacy underwear and flash it in front of the Purple Dragon's face, which happened in my game on Sunday, I have access to stat blocks that I've predetermined are suitable for this this guild and this group to use, and I can quickly jump into combat, and I can punish the person for flashing around underwear in front of a guard in a situation where it just wasn't called for. Players, man, you can't control them, can you? Items, I've gone way overboard here as well, guys. Like over the years, like I've put in Aurora's whole Realms catalogue, right? I don't use these notes. It was this idea that I had. I'm a guy that just has to have complete notes, so I did it. I don't think it's necessary. Magic items, though, definitely. I do have languages in here. Again, these are things that I use sometimes. Right, so if I'm learning about a new thing that exists in my world, I'll quite often make it a note for it. It doesn't mean I ever come back and read it, like I'll probably never come back and read all of this stuff. I do use these occasionally, like these sort of, translation tools when I'm making player handouts, and that's quite handy. Soundboard was this fantastic idea. I don't really use it, if I'm completely honest. I have a lot of sound coming through my maps. Last session I had Spotify playing because I was listening to it before the session and just forgot to turn it off, and my players didn't complain, so I just stayed there. They did complain when the music stopped, actually, so we just restarted it, but I couldn't really hear it. I was too deep in my world. So yeah, sound can be a handy thing to use. I have used it sometimes, like screaming and stuff, like can be good. I use it during situations like if someone's getting tortured, or if I'm really trying to anger the party to spark a reaction out of them. I will sometimes use sound for that, but it's few and far between. Spells, as I said, are quite handy. And random tables, I don't use the ones in here, to be honest. I use the ones up in the DM screen. It's just something that's been left there. So anyway, that is sort of like my vault, right? That is what I've got. That's how I use it. I find it very efficient, right? For the most part, like everything that is in my vault doesn't actually get used at the table a large chunk of the time. A lot of it is me typing so I can remember things, right? It's me copy and pasting things in. It's me organising things in a way that I've thought about it so that I can remember that thing when I'm later checking against it. And it's all about this for me, right? Like, this is my bread and butter these days. If I was to lose this, I would be devastated. And I'm going to keep growing this as I go in order to really sort of map out what's happened. And I really like that I can pull on things that I've got. Like, I can pull on a wiki entry, I can pull on a module journal session plan. I can document, the things that I'm planning on doing. So that's all really cool. Now, the only other things, just in case people ask, there is an Excalibur folder. It's got scripts in there that are used by Excalibur, so I just left that there. There's a scripts folder here that's empty. I did have scripts that were just testing in there. I've got my assets folder, which is all of my pictures. One of my patrons has been like trying to organize this for me. So that's why there's folders. I don't do that myself. Like, I am lazy, guys. Like, I just pump it in there, and I rarely need to know where it is. But I will say this, it is getting useful now that I'm starting to use Foundry, because my maps are in my maps folder, and that is quite handy. So to that bloke, thank you. I need to get better at it. I know I need to get better at it. And I got my templates. I use my templates a lot, but obviously I don't use it through the folder. I use it through my Alt-T, I think it is, in order to trigger that. All right, so it's just got a search. So yeah, that is my vault. You know, hopefully that gives some of you a bit of a look behind the curtain. I know some of you like to see this sort of stuff and get a really sort of good understanding of how things are laid out and what it is that I'm using and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully that gives you some ideas. I love my setup. You know, as I said, I've tried lots of different setups and I don't see myself changing from this anytime soon. I'm very, very happy with how it is. I mean, I think the only thing that we really want right now is my players are sort of setting an expectation that I put another map on the roof. They think the Underdark would be a fantastic thing to like be sitting above them, so that they can look up and see the Underdark. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to pull that off, but we'll see how we go. So it's a stretch goal. But anyway, guys, that's been my setup. That's been my vault, and hopefully you've got some value out of that. So have a great day. I guess we'll speak to you on the forums. If you do enjoy this content, please do like and subscribe. And a massive thanks to my patrons. Like, you guys keep me enthusiastic in making new videos. So it's always good to have that. So anyway, enjoy your day, guys. We'll see you on the forums.